Hello, creative, and welcome back to the Empowered Creatives Podcast, finding confidence between hustle and burnout. I'm your host, Victoria Hines, creative career coach, helping creatives just like you level up or find your next path in your career. So this is solo episode part 2 of our resistance series. This one's called You've Defeated Your Roadblocks Before. So we're going to talk about how you've actually conquered those things, those roadblocks you've been facing before. If you didn't listen to last week's episode, I highly recommend listening to that one before you dive into this one. So just to start it out and just to kind of like level the playing fields, resistance isn't going anywhere. I actually, for a brief period of time, well, honestly, like about 6 months to a year, I actually thought that you could defeat resistance. I thought that I could defeat resistance and it would never come back. This would have been, let's take you back. This would have been 2020. So I started my business and I started reading book after book after book and listening to podcasts about imposter syndrome, procrastination, facing your upper limit, and hopping into clubhouse rooms, having conversations with other artists around these topics. And I was like, I know so many tools and tactics, and I know resistance and roadblocks so freaking well. I'm going to be able to defeat this thing, and it is never going to come back. Except a month later, I would suddenly find myself procrastinating and feeling bad about myself and wanting to hide from the entire world and not show up on Instagram or go live. And it took me a while to realize that, this is that same enemy that I fought about a month back, and it's back again. So my little idea that I could, slay resistance and it's gone, didn't quite turn out the way I thought it would. So I want to share with you actually this quote that I found. So I recently got into tarot. I've actually been down in Savannah, Georgia for the summer for a bit. And I picked up this tarot deck called The Hero's Journey Dream Oracle by Kelly Sullivan Walden. And I really gravitated towards it because I love the idea of a hero's journey. I love being able to kind of compare what feels like my day-to-day life to this epic ordeal or epic journey that I think I'm facing on a day-to-day basis, which we all are. But she has, if you're familiar with the hero's journey, there's this whole stage, refusal of the call. That's what it's called. So you get a call to adventure and you're like, nope, don't want to do it. And this whole section of the tarot deck is about resistance. And I loved this quote that she had around one of these tarot cards. So I want to share it with you. Resistance is part of the journey. However, where the hero takes a nap, then keeps on going, the ordinary person simply gives up. The hero takes breaks, paces themselves, and allows resistance to join the epic journey. Because it's coming, whether you want it to or not. Whew. All right, I'm just going to read that again, which I know is a very Brené Brown move, but I just want to make sure that you let this sink in. Resistance is part of the journey. However, where the hero takes a nap, then keeps on going, the ordinary person simply gives up. The hero takes breaks, paces themselves, and allows resistance to join the epic journey because it's coming, whether you want it to or not. Powerful. You've probably heard this phrase, you are running a marathon, not a sprint. Roadblocks, procrastination, overthinking instead of doing, incessant worrying, self-medicating, imposter syndrome. All of these things are going to pop up on your journey. It doesn't matter what you're doing. So this episode is going to talk about how do you start defeating the unslayable monster that is resistance, aka your roadblocks. Now, if you're being really hard on yourself about the resistance that you might be facing right now, I'm going to rebuild your confidence with this one next sentence that I'm going to say. So if you take nothing else away from this episode, besides the quote I just read, which was incredible. I want you to take away this. Ready? You've overcome your roadblocks before. You have defeated procrastination, fear, worry, self-medication. You name it. Any of those roadblocks that we talked about in part 1, you've actually defeated them before. You've gotten around them. You've moved past them. Maybe, I'll grant it to you, the scoreboard isn't in your favor. But I bet you that you've gotten around this roadblock before. So that's what this episode's going to focus on. We're going to talk about how to create or start to create those back pocket strategies or your toolkit to slay those roadblocks when you hit them. Real quick, I'm going to interrupt this podcast to tell you about a really nifty tool that I've made just for you. As creatives, it's so easy to find ourselves lost in jobs that we don't really like. So much so that when we decide to find a day job or a support job that we actually enjoy, we have no idea where to start. This is where a creative career audit comes in. Head to the show notes below to grab the link to my download, and you can get your free workbook that will help you identify what brings you joy and what drains you in the world of work. No more day jobs or support jobs that make you just feel inside. It's time to find something that's going to light you up again. All right, so believe it or not, our pattern-filled roadblocks are often kept there by a story we keep telling ourselves. We believe that we are stuck and unable to move past this pattern. However, as you'll mention before I took a little break, I guarantee there are moments where you have succeeded despite the roadblock in your way. I want to share a little story about imposter syndrome with you. So when I first started my coaching business in 2020, I was terrified to sell for the first time. I had actually been coaching for free to test the waters, and I just wanted to gain some experience. So I had been doing a lot of coaching for creative types and entrepreneurs for free for about 3 or 4 months. And finally, the time came where I was like, okay, Victoria, you need to try to sell. Like, you need to, you're worth it. You need to sell your services. And I was absolutely freaking terrified. I was like, I felt like an imposter. I was like, who am I to sell what I'm good at? Who am I to actually put a price tag on this? Who am I? I haven't had as much experience as Joe Schmo over there or the other person that I saw on Instagram. Oh my gosh, they're doing so much cooler. So much imposter syndrome was popping up for me. And then I had this moment where I remembered that back in 2019, I was helping a friend with her film festival in Chicago, and I had some fundraising experience, and she wanted to find donors to help fund the film festival. And I was like, great, I'm going to try this. I had never done like any sort of fundraising completely on my own. I had always been working on a team. So from the ground up, I built an entire sponsorship plan for the film festival. We had 0 prospects. Absolutely none. I had not a list of names. Like, I didn't really know who had attended the festival in the past. Nobody. And yet, I managed to, within 6 months, find a donor that gave us enough money to cover the expenses for the entire festival. Now, granted, that donor was $2,500, but still, $2,500 was nothing to bat at. I had never, ever had anybody agree to give me $2,500 for a project. So this felt like, I was on top of the world. It was terrifying. I remember going to go meet this donor for a lunch and just being like, I don't know how this is going to go. I was terrified, but I survived. And that feeling I had after successfully doing something I had never done before, after successfully, raising money, which is very much like selling, but getting this money for this festival or this project or this service that I really believed in, that was one of the biggest highs in the world. I remember calling somebody and being like, oh my gosh, I actually did this. I did this. It felt amazing. Overcoming your roadblocks is going to feel like that. It means that you have to put yourself in temporary discomfort for the benefit of a long-term positive outcome. So, I want you to start looking at your past this week and realizing when you've actually moved past your roadblocks in the past. And I want you to recognize how many times you've actually succeeded. Don't focus on the failures. Focus on the number of times you succeeded. So here's your one thing this week. I want you to list each of your roadblocks on a sheet of paper. Grab a sheet of paper, grab a pen, list some of your roadblocks. It could be procrastination. It could be not finishing projects on time. It could be incessantly worrying, picking fights, self-doubt. If you need a list, I'll actually drop it into the show notes below. This is by no means a complete list, so please feel free to list what you feel is getting in your way. And I want you to then think of a time where you were able to actually move past this roadblock. If you can't think of a time where that happened, is there a similar moment where you found success despite the roadblock? And I want you to describe this success in as much detail as possible. What did it feel like? What was that feeling you had after moving around it? What were you doing? What was happening in the world around you? How did you feel on the inside? How did you feel on the outside? How did you then portray yourself to the world? What did it feel like to move past the problem and accomplish what you had set out to do? Now I want you to remember that feeling and the tactic you use the next time that you face the same roadblock. I want you to remember you've defeated it before and you can do it again. All right, next week, I'm going to have my third solo episode on resistance. This will be part 3, where I share 7 back pocket strategies that other people have used to overcome their roadblocks. So if you're looking forward, if you're enjoying this series, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review so that you will be the first to know when next week's episode drops. All right, until the next time, stay creative.